Welcome, everyone, to Congregation L'Dor Va-Dor's monthly program, Parson to Parson. It's a controversial issues forum, and tonight we have as our hosts, our co-hosts, Rabbi Barry Silver, Pastor Fritz Aufdencamp, and we are pleased to have as our guest tonight, Dmytro Bozhko. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Take it away, gentlemen.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you once again for joining us. Thank you, Sharon, for making this possible. Thanks, Pastor Aufdencamp, for adding your voice to a rational approach to religion and an interfaith approach that promotes harmony among all people. And we are very pleased to have Dmytro here with us. He is a leader of the Ukrainian movement in the United States. He's done an incredible job rallying support for the people of Ukraine. We stand solidly behind them. Our president, Stanley Rosenwasser, has the Ukrainian flag in the background, and we say Slava Ukraini, Ukraine Slava, Slava Heroim, and Mets Putinyu. Is that right? Smets Putinyu. He can translate. We are pleased to have Dmytro here. It's the 1-year anniversary of not the invasion of Ukraine, just the most recent one by Russia, which started a while back with the invasion of Crimea. Dmytro, I'll let you pronounce your name properly so people can understand it, and also I'll let you share whatever you'd like to share about your thoughts on this 1-year anniversary of the most recent incursion. And also, I know you're planning a major rally in West Palm for support, and I'd like you to share that information with us so that we can know. I turn it over to you, Dmytro.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. Thank you all. I'm really appreciated this opportunity to be online, to see all of you guys. Thank you for that. It's an honor for me. So as Barry told, yes, we are preparing a rally in West Palm Beach in downtown on between North Clematis and South Clematis Street and Flagler Avenue, probably. It's a waterfront park in West Palm Beach. It's a beautiful place, and we're gonna make this place even more significant than it is now, with the Ukrainian and American flags raised very high on next Friday afternoon after 5 p.m. We are inviting all our American friends here in South Florida, the same as Barry and all other supporters that are helping us a lot starting from last year. And that's absolutely a correct statement that this war started years ago. It's not only 1-year-old war. It's a recent escalation that started 1 year ago on February 24. Very early at 4 a.m. in the morning, Ukrainians woke up because of shelling, because of explosions across all country. And for most of Ukrainians, it is still February 24, regardless of the calendar switched 12 times, right? But it is still February 24. It's like 1 year never-ending horror. And we are very appreciating support from US government, from American people, and thanks to this support, thanks to American people for provided military support and humanitarian support. It's very significant. Without that level of support, probably Ukraine would fall. And the US is one of the most powerful country who is driving this across the globe, and European Union is actually following the America, and European Union is still reacting. There are only some small subset of European countries who are providing support actively and together with the United States, like Baltic countries. They are very small nations and very small countries, but they believe and they know what is Russian friendship could cause to them. So that is why they're helping us a lot. Let's say from the percentage perspective, Baltic countries investing in Ukraine right now, most significant numbers based on their, economic power. So let me invite all of you guys and all of your friends and neighbors to this rally on February 24, 5 p.m. in West Palm Beach downtown. We are preparing right now some posters for this rally. There are going to be a few pretty interesting events and informational events. We're going to talk about why Ukraine should win this war. It's very clear, very well described and designed, the reasons. And the reasons are coming from American professor, Timothy Snyder. He's a professor in
Right.
university. Yeah, and we are working with him actually. We are working with him directly to get these posters and do our best to deliver the main messages, to make sure that people can see very clear why it is so significant for Ukraine and for entire world to win in this war. Barry, you on mute.
Yes, thank you so much. We'll take questions and comments, but first I want to hear from Pastor Aufdencamp, his observations about this, the incursion into Ukraine and the aggression from Russia. Pastor Aufdencamp, it's all yours.
I find Putin unbelievable, but I almost find Ukraine's resistance more unbelievable. It's incredible what the human spirit can do. I want to tell you a small interest story. I was watching Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes interview Mrs. Zelensky, and toward the end of the interview, he asked her if he could show her a few slides about pictures across the U.S. And he showed her pictures of the Ukrainian flag being hanging from porches and back on cars and what have you, and she was very impressed, almost to tears. And so the next day I got on Amazon and I ordered a Ukrainian flag. Well, they not only sent me a large Ukrainian flag, they sent me real small ones also. So we have a planter outside of our condo, and I put that little flag next to the flower because the flower had the same colors as the flag, and I thought, oh, this Ukrainian flag fits in very well. The next day, that flag was in the trash. Well, thank God Amazon sent me like 10 of them. So first of all, I took the one out of the trash, put it back in by the flower plant, and it stayed there for a number of days. And then I went on a trip, and a friend called me and said, by the way, Fritz, someone once again took your Ukrainian flag. Well, I replaced it, and as I said, I've got like 10 of them. So I have yet to figure out who in the world would remove that flag.
Well, Pastor Aufdencamp, you just showed that persistence pays off, and the people who are defending Ukraine are not easily deterred. I also want to point out that our president has the Ukrainian flag in the background, not because we're discussing Ukraine today. It's always in his background. Every time, every dialogue, every time he has that flag in the background. And Stanley, I'd like you to perhaps share with us why that is. And also I want everyone to know, including Dmytro, that this is being recorded, and this can be disseminated far and wide, this discussion, to indicate the strong support of the Jewish people for the people of Ukraine. Go ahead, our president, Stanley Rosenwasser, please share your views.
Thank you. Good evening, Dmytro. Glad to see you. The reason I have the Ukrainian flag, I've lived here in South Florida for about 25 years. And I got to know a gentleman in the synagogue that I belong to who was from Ukraine. And he fought in World War II, way before what's going on now. And he was in the underground. And he met and separated from his wife She went one place, he went another, but they finally caught back up again and lived here in the United States. He was a wonderful man, and he became an artist with sculpture and painting, and unfortunately he passed away. But his knowledge of Ukraine was exceptional and extraordinary, and I got to know a lot about the Ukrainian backbone, if you will. They don't give up, and I don't think they'll ever give up or give in to this brutal incursion, as the rabbi says. But more than that, continuous bombing and shelling every day. Amazingly, Biden today took a trip by train from Poland to Kyiv, and he made it safely, and took a train back out of Kyiv to go back to Poland. So I hope he's safe. But they walked in downtown Kyiv side by side, right in the middle of the street in broad daylight. So it was quite an event today. So I hope that the United States can rally the EU or whoever is needed to back up Ukraine, keep them whole. And, whatever we can do in the United States, I think we're obliged to do so.
Thank you, Stanley. Let me just share a few thoughts about this. One is that Putin was always acting aggressively towards Ukraine, towards his own people, towards his opposition. Basically, the rest of the community, the world community, did absolutely nothing. We allowed his aggression to go undeterred and unpunished. And that only goes to show that if you allow aggression to go on without challenging it, you will create a monster. And as I say, the proof is in the Putin. All right, we allowed a monster to be created. And we should have stopped him earlier. Let me also suggest that at L'Dor Va-Dor, we believe in truth. So we tell the truth about every situation, good and bad. And so there are things that we mention that antagonize perhaps all sides and also cheer up all sides, because we believe that if truth is told, then good things will happen. So the truth is, from my perspective, that the people of Ukraine are the tip of the spear, leading the charge to protect democracy in the world. The United States is no longer the world leader in advancing democracy. We had a challenge to our democracy, an attempted overthrow, and an entire party is refusing to cooperate to uncover the roots of it and to make sure it doesn't happen again. And they seem to have learned nothing. So our country is teetering in its battle to preserve our democracy. Ukraine is 100% solidly fighting for democracy and giving their lives and their homes and their security. In addition, the United States is supporting Ukraine in the same way that the United States supports Israel. If there was no United States, there would probably be no Ukraine, and there would probably be no Israel. We're both kind of in the same bucket. But in my opinion, we're not doing nearly enough to help the people of Ukraine. These people are suffering horribly. Their infrastructure is destroyed. They're freezing in the winter. They're being killed, brutalized, exiled, wounded, injured, orphaned. And we're allowing this to happen. The world community could deter and stop the aggression. We shouldn't be sending piecemeal weapons to Ukraine saying, here you go, best of luck. Let's see what you can do. We have the strongest military in the world. And I believe we should be using it to defend the people of Ukraine. Far, far, far too many people have died and been exiled, tortured, and killed. This is wrong. In addition, it's wrong for any country to buy one drop of oil or spend one dime in Russia. Europe is cutting back somewhat, but that's a half measure. It's like dealing with the mafia, and instead of supporting them 100%, you give half of your wealth over to the mafia. which, by the way, is what we do when we purchase oil from Saudi Arabia. It's wrong. We should not give any of our largesse to Russia. We should allow their economy to be destroyed so that they will revolt against Putin. We're doing half measures, and it's insufficient. Let me just say one other thing. As someone who's attended rallies, spoken out for Ukraine, and will continue to do so in a very strong way, I was disappointed in Zelensky's visit to Congress. In his visit to Congress, he delivered a Christmas message on a day that was both Christmas and Hanukkah. It would have been appropriate, especially born to Jewish parents, if he delivered not just a Christmas message, but a Hanukkah message. Why? Hanukkah represents a victory by a small group of people over a foreign invading force that tried to destroy their independence and take over their country. Hanukkah represents the victory of a small group of people filled with fervor and zeal to overcome the most powerful empire on earth at that time. It would have been so appropriate and so wonderful. Mr. Zelensky remembered his Jewish roots and remembered to wish the United States a message, not just from Christmas, but also from Hanukkah. Perhaps we can send through this Zoom meeting and through our allies a message that it would be really great if he remembered his Jewish roots and remembered that the Jewish people exemplify a small group fighting for independence. Especially in the Holocaust, there was a great Jewish partisan fighter who, his name was Bielski, Tuvia Bielski. He led partisans against the Nazis. He had a ragtag group, and he said, freedom begins with an act of defiance. And so we defy tyrants and dictators. We defy Putin, and we're in it for the long haul, whatever it takes. But I hope that the world community will unite against Putin economically, militarily, and allow the people of Ukraine to go back to a normal life as soon as possible and not have to fight till every last person is suffering and going through all types of vicissitudes. That's my comment, and I'd like to hear from others.
I wonder
Emily.
Okay.
Fritz, did you have something you wanted to say?
I wanted to ask Dmytro when he thinks we will start sending planes.
I believe that our pilots are already doing the training, and the planes will show up pretty soon.
We will send planes, I'm sure, right?
Yes.
I'm sure we will reach that point where we will finally, like in the past, we've said, oh, we're not going to send this, but then after a few months, we do. I think we said we're not going to send planes, but I think at some point we're going to do that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's rather plain that will happen. Let's hear from Emily.
Okay, two things. First of all, as I said, I have family from the Ukraine. I've been there. I want to know why Russia was allowed to take Crimea. I understand why Russia wanted Crimea because, you know, the strategic location, etc. Although now that we deal with a different kind of weaponry, it's not as important. Do you think when this is over and we win, which we will win, will Crimea be coming back to Ukraine?
Absolutely, because Crimea is Ukraine. It's only Russia who claims it as its Russian territory. So absolutely, that is one of the definition of this war. To win this war, meaning get back entire country, territories back, right? Including Crimea, for sure. It's Ukrainian territory. One of the reasons that you just brought up why Russia took over Crimea, because of its strategic and stuff, it's just a Russian propaganda. Because from the military perspective, there is nothing strategic in the piece of land in the small Black Sea that has only one exit through the small narrow path to the Mediterranean Sea. It's just useless from the military perspective.
The reason is clear also. It's been said that all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. So
That's
Russia
right.
invaded, and the good people of the United States and the world did nothing. And
Yeah,
so he got
right.
away with it. And just like when Hitler invaded Czechoslovakia and the Anschluss in Vienna, the world community did nothing. So he got
Right.
away with it. And the world community doesn't want to stick its neck out and have to fight. So they just allow him to take over and leave it to the people of Ukraine and say best of luck. It's not how the world community should work. We need to stand up for democracy. We need to support Ukraine. We need to support Israel, and we need to support democracy. Go ahead, Emily.
Okay, last question. Since we all know that Putin and his agenda is evil, is the United Nations a useless organization now, that it can't rally its members to unite against this aggression?
Yes, absolutely.
Good question.
One of them demands that we are screaming about, starting from 2014, that Russia should be banned from the Security Council of United Nations
Yeah,
as minimum, because they have a right of veto any possible decisions, which
Yeah.
is absolutely failed situation. There is no way to punish them in any legal, under any legal circumstances, because they can tell, no, it's not me, and I put veto on anything else. It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
Well, the people of Ukraine have every reason to be cynical about the United Nations, as Dmytro said.
yeah,
And perhaps they can get some inkling of what it's like to be part of the nation of Israel and the Jewish people, which has been vilified mercilessly by the United Nations, the one democracy in the Middle East, which has been condemned over and over again because of anti-Semitism. And perhaps Ukraine will begin to vote more consistently to support the people of Israel, as the people of Ukraine see how horrible it is when the United Nations, which is supposed to support freedom and democracy, fails to do so. Israel needs allies. Ukraine needs allies. They should be working together and support each other in the free world. To some extent they do, but there have been quite a few votes that have been disappointing. But yes, Dmytro is sadly correct. The United Nations has
question for
failed
you.
miserably to stand up for the people of Ukraine and to stand against aggression from Russia. Any other comments?
Me.
Yes.
I have
go
a
ahead.
question for Dmytro. Dmytro,
No.
as far as I know, the United States is supposed to be sending Patriot missiles, anti-missile system to Ukraine. Is it there? Is it working?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's one of the best anti-missiles systems that we have now, and Ukrainian army is using this as like up to 100% level of accuracy. So it
But
has
this,
very low level of failing shots.
But the Russian missiles are still getting through. Is it
Yeah.
just that they don't have enough Patriot
Yes.
anti-missiles?
Absolutely, because Ukraine, it's the biggest country in Europe. You can imagine that it's just a size. It's not easy to cover the entire country with this anti-missile system. It would be enormously expensive because it's just huge, right? Of course, Russia is learning the passes, right? And they are trying to find the best route for their missiles to navigate through the protected areas by these Patriots and NASAMS and any other anti-missile systems, right? They're doing this. We can see it. Every next attack with missiles, they are launching the missiles through the new trajectory, right? They're trying to find the let's say, safe place for their missiles, right? To pass through the anti-missile systems. And that is the complexity of this war, of this type of war. And Ukrainian army, I believe, is using all these systems literally in the completely new way, right? They are mobilized, they put these systems to the very small and fast vehicles instead of, deploying them statically somewhere, and they are moving all the time. They are not stopping for even for 5 minutes. It's another secret that Ukrainian army is doing with this system, because they are expensive and they are extremely effective. So we need to keep them, and we have to be very very accurate with them.
It should remember that the missiles are very effective. They knock out the vast majority of the missiles fired by Russia, but even if 10% come through, it's devastating. And so they are effective, but they're not 100% effective.
They are effective, let's say they are effective in 100% of their shots, right? If Patriot is launching the missile, it will hit. The question is to cover the territory, right? And it's not only Patriot, it's some other systems too. Even the handheld system, right? That soldiers just keeping on them and driving around some areas trying to protect and catch this missile that's cruising in a very low latitude.
Now, allegedly, the Russians were supposed to be forming a new push over on the east side of the country, I guess, and they had massed another hundreds of thousands of troops. Seemed ideal to be able to take some of those tanks and knock out those Russian troops.
Yes, absolutely. This information regarding the next Russian big move into Ukrainian territory, I believe it's part of the propaganda, which is another side of this war, the information war, which is probably even bigger than the real hot war on the ground. All the information that we can hear from the Russia, from the sides who supports Russia or who are neutral, we have to be very careful with accepting this information. It's a very powerful tool. So it's great that we have some intels from different sides, from different countries. And again, we should be very careful by accepting and believing in this information.
Dmytro, you might be interested to know that in the Torah reading last Friday night, when we read from the Bible, there's a certain passage ascribed to each week. We read about evil in the world, and the word for evil in Hebrew is Russia.
Russia.
I thought you might find that interesting. Ginny, you had a
I
question
have
or comment.
I have a comment. And I hope I'm not being naive about this, and it's sort of after the fact, but my personal feeling is that Putin should have been stopped immediately at the border. This should have never been allowed. That the country should have united and said to him, you cross over, you're done. I mean, I think there should have been a major force against it, because look at the mess. People are saying, oh, well, we would have been fighting him and all. Well, look what we're in now. Look what's happened. Look at the torture that's happened. The horror of this whole thing. That's my personal opinion. I don't know if I'm being naive, whether that could have been done or not, but that was my feeling.
I said the same thing opening this up, that Putin should have been stopped long ago. You don't allow evil dictators and aggressors to just go unpunished. That's the lesson, not just of Russia. How many genocides have we had since World War II? Because the nations of the world refuse to stand up and protect people outside their borders. The United Nations is an abysmal failure in standing up to genocide and wars of aggression. But you're absolutely right. We were supporting Putin. We were buying his oil.
Right.
When he went into Crimea, we were paying
the corporate,
him for oil.
That's corporate greed. That's all. It's all corporate, and it's all corporate greed, and it's all politics, and it's all tied together. And it's such a difficult thing to even break through. And I mean, it's just, I mean, it's really disheartening, totally.
Well, what you see is a failure by the governments of the world and the religious community to stand up against aggression, because they don't want to get involved. They want to keep buying Russian oil, and we bow down and kiss the feet of dictators and tyrants and murderers because we need their oil. And so the governments of the world have failed. And I would dare say that the religions also. There are people in the religious community who are rallying support for Ukraine, no doubt about it. But the vast majority have failed to do so. And the religion itself is in part responsible for what's going on in Ukraine. It is Putin who is taking advantage of the Russian Orthodox Church to help spread his propaganda. And we should not forget that the people of Russia, many of them are just going along with evil, but a lot of them are brainwashed or indoctrinated to believe Putin's lies, that there's a greater Russia that encompasses Ukraine, going all the way back to the year 1000 when the country was united behind the Russian Orthodox Church, and the center was Kiev. And religion is being used in order to indoctrinate people to fight against Ukraine. Fritz, I'd be interested in hearing your take on that, if you're familiar with it at all, and what you think about the role of the religious community.
I would like to ask Dmytro, what is the relationship between Christians and Jews in Ukraine?
And also Christianity itself and how it's being manipulated to advance Putin's cause.
Yeah. I would be honest with you guys. I'm not very familiar with the religious side of our life in Ukraine, but what I know, right, in my experience, I lived in the east part of Ukraine. I was born in the Donetsk, in Kyiv, and these areas occupied from 2014, right? We moved to Kyiv in 2008 with my family, so we lived in the center, in the capital of Ukraine. And I never heard any stories like some religious group fighting with other. Never. I never experienced any problems regarding language or like regarding Christianity versus Judaism versus any other religions. Also, I know that in Ukraine we have temples that belong to different religions. One of my teacher from college, he was captured by rebels in Donetsk, and he was in prison for more than 1 year. He was tortured very bad. His name is Igor Kozlovsky, and he is a professor. He's a very interesting and deep person. He's a philosopher. He's learning the different religions, and he has friends in all around the Ukraine. And once he told us that Ukraine is one of the example how different communities with different beliefs can live together successfully.
Yes.
And I believe
anti-Semitism is not a big thing then.
Well, no,
right.
well,
I did not see anything else. For me, it's hard to compare how it could be or how bad it could be, right? Then different kinds of groups could live together and could fight with each other. I never seen this before, never.
Well, let's be very clear about the role of religion. Okay, I know people personally, Jewish people who lived in Russia when there were pogroms and inquisition, all types of things, and their homes were invaded and they were beaten. These Jewish people, they're like you, Dmytro. They didn't hear anybody they weren't in churches that were preaching anti-Semitism because they didn't go to those churches. But the churches were teaching them to kill Jewish people, and then they acted on it. And Jewish people were just minding their own business, and then they were being attacked and killed. The fact that you're not aware of it, of what's going on in Russia, is all the more reason why we need to be aware of what they're learning, not in Ukraine,
Right.
but in Russia, the propaganda that they're getting in Russia. Just like the Jewish people in World War II, they were being killed for supposedly killing Jesus. They never heard these things told in their synagogues, but you better believe that in the churches, that's what they were being told, and they were victimized by it. Just like the people who went to work on 9/11, They went and did their job. They went to the Twin Towers. They didn't know at that time that there was some group called Al-Qaeda that was teaching people to kill Americans and to hate Americans. But one day they went to work and they died because of some religious teachings that they had no knowledge of it. They just went to work and then they died that day because people were learning things in the name of religion that they were not aware of. And that's why at L'Dor Va-Dor, we believe it's very important that we become aware of what other people are learning and how religion is being used. The Russian Orthodox Church is a propaganda arm of Putin, teaching his people that there is no such thing as Ukraine,
Right.
that Ukraine is part of Greater Russia, and the Russian Orthodox Church was founded in Kiev, and Kiev is part of the Russian Orthodox Church, and therefore it's been said that to get good people do good things and bad people do bad things, but to get good people to do bad things takes religion. And I say to you that there are people who think they're doing the right thing. They're being religiously brainwashed, and they're going off and they're killing people and they're dying in the name of religions that are being used for a very, very malicious purpose. And we need to stand up to that. By the way, also, the Jewish people know what happened in Ukraine. All right, it wasn't a pretty sight. One of the worst, most horrific massacres
Oh,
of
Bobby
World
Yar.
War II. Babi Yar, or
Babi
in
Yar.
Ukraine they call it Babin Yar, was
Yeah.
perpetrated by Ukrainians against the Jewish people. It was not the people who did all the killing. I believe it was like 33,000 people in a ravine in 2 days. They were not
Right.
German. They were Ukrainian. There are Jewish people who now say, well, we shouldn't help Ukraine. Look what they did. Not one person alive today in Ukraine that was probably even involved or knew what was going on. It's a whole new generation. To blame the people of Ukraine today for that massacre is irrational. And so we stand up for the people of Ukraine, but we need to be candid about what happened in the past, and we need to stand together today. Go ahead, Emily.
Two things, Dmytro, and I'm sure you stress this. A lot of people don't understand the size and importance of Ukraine. As opposed to small countries in Western Europe, Switzerland, and the Ukraine has a goodly amount of land and produced a lot of grain as well as natural resources. That's one of the reasons that Russia wants it. It's a big country, it's a fertile country, and it has potential for a lot of wealth and development. Okay. That has to be, the value of Ukraine has to be stressed strategically as well as the evil. But just the other thing is, there is a big movement in Russia against Putin, mainly the younger people. And Rabbi, these are people who are not religious, who are not involved in any of the churches, any of the religions, who don't want to fight for the Russian army, don't want to go to Ukraine, don't want to go to Siberia or wherever else. Putin still has a lot of power, obviously, but I think if we could do something sub rosa or whatever the term is to foster that kind of underground rebellion against Putin, I think that would be very fruitful.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. There's a huge anti-Putin movement within Russia, but it's not coming from the Russian Orthodox Church. It's coming from outside of it,
It's coming from the young people who don't want to serve in the military, and you really can't blame them. It's kind of like our Vietnam. I don't want to even go there and talk about my politics, but why should my child go and fight in Putin's war? And I think if we can encourage that somehow, we could perhaps weaken him from within. Just a thought.
But L'Dor Va-Dor, we believe strongly in indicating the faults and the blame of the religious community so we can try to speak out and do something against it. At the rally in West Palm, we will try to assemble a broad spectrum of the religious community in order to get the religious community solidly on board in fighting and supporting the fight to free Ukraine of Russian influence. So we want to mobilize the religious community and challenge any religious group that is trying to support Putin and his invasion. Who else wants to
want to
speak?
say something?
Dmytro, go ahead.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, just let me come back to our previous discussion regarding a religion. I just want to finish it from my understanding, right? You're absolutely right, Barry, that there is a Russian church, and I wasn't considering this church as the religious group. It's not a religion group. It's a KGB sponsored and KGB supported propagandists who were driving the main idea of the Russian power, Russian empire to the Ukrainian people, right? So it's not the church, in my understanding, even before this, the recent invasion started. But you're absolutely right about all other statements. And just to notice that what actually Russian did in 2014, then they took over Donetsk. They shut down the Baptist, houses, right, where Baptist temples. They shut it down, synagogue. They shut it down, Muslims temples too, regardless of the people of Asian people, right, who took over some of the areas in the east part of Ukraine who were Muslims, regardless of that. And the only allowed church was Russian church, starting from 2014 in Crimea and in occupied cities of east part of Ukraine. That is what they did. And probably this is exactly what they're doing now in newly occupied territories, like near Kherson and other cities.
Well, Dmytro, I agree with you that the political arm of Russia has co-opted and taken over the influence of the Russian Orthodox Church. But Russian Orthodox Christianity has been around for 1,000 years, long before Putin. It's not that it's not a religion. And we can't just say, well, they're acting violently, therefore they're not a religion. It's a religion, but it's been co-opted, taken over, and used to support Russian invasion. Just as in Florida, we can't say that, well, Christianity is not really a religion. It is, but it's been co-opted by a governor and by a party that is using it in order to suppress abortion rights, to harm the environment, and to do other nefarious things. The problem is, Dmytro, that you have in Ukraine and we have in the United States, is when government and religion unite.
Yes.
And when the government is an aggressive government and a tyrannical government, then you have serious problems. And like you say, they moved in and then they said, this is the only religion that we now recognize. All the other ones are out, so that they can co-opt the religious community and use it to fight. Because if you want to get people to kill other people, nationalism is a good way of doing it. And so is religious indoctrination. And it was Einstein who said that nationalism is the measles of mankind. And that disease of that measles is spread into religion when the two fuse. That's why we believe strongly at L'Dor Va-Dor and the Jewish community in separating government from religion, so that religious fervor can never be used in support of fighting and killing and war. That's a perversion of religion. I wouldn't say it's not religion, because sadly the history of religion is involved in much violence, but it's a misuse and abuse of religion, and we need to stand solidly against it. Anybody else have any comments or questions that they'd like to ask? Dmytro, we do appreciate very much not only your presence here, but you're taking a leadership role in this community. I've seen you all over the place. You're doing a tremendous job rallying support, speaking out, and articulating very forcefully and very candidly the situation in Ukraine. We thank you for what you're doing, and we stand 100% behind you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your support. It's very significant for me to hear this from you, and to see all your support and while you're knocking to the messages and the ideas that we are discussing. It's very significant for me, and especially right before our next rally on February 24, because it gives me additional energy, it gives me additional motivation to do even more. And
yeah, and one other thing I will say that at L'Dor Va-Dor is that we don't seek uniformity. We seek unity. And we don't seek conformity, we can seek community. So you and L'Dor Va-Dor, we may differ on certain things. We don't think exactly the same. Right. We're both independent free thinkers. But one thing that we both agree on is that we stand solidly behind you, and we will resist this horrific, barbaric aggression by Russia, and we will do everything we can. And believe me, we're not doing enough. You're the tip of the spear in Ukraine, and we agree with you 100%. We need to do more to alleviate the suffering and bring an end to this conflict, a speedy resolution.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
One quick note. I'm not sure if you noticed it, that Ukrainian anthem has 2 lines, that we will put our soul and body for our freedom. And probably there is only one anthem for any other nations that can tell this very clear and loud. And we love these lines of our anthem.
I've had the pleasure of hearing the anthem sung many times in Ukrainian. It is a beautiful, beautiful anthem filled with idealism that we can all espouse. And as an American, I'll say it's a lot better than ours. I think if America wanted to do well, we would take your anthem, translate it into English, substitute America for Ukraine, and we would have a beautiful national anthem.
Right.
Almost as beautiful as the national anthem of Israel, which is named Hatikva, the hope. You can't get anywhere without hope. So we both have beautiful national anthems. And I encourage everyone to come out to the rally, because I'm sure, Dmytro, that you'll be up there in front leading the singing of this incredible national anthem. And you really haven't heard anything quite like it, as to hear people from Ukraine singing with pride and a tear in the eye, the national anthem of Ukraine, telling Putin, Ukraine exists, it's powerful, it's strong, it's idealistic, and we will defeat you. That comes through loud and clear.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I think we've had a great discussion. Fritz, you want to wrap it up?
In the beginning, at some point, we questioned why Putin wasn't stopped at the beginning. I think the world did not think Ukraine could stand up to Russia.
Oh, I agree.
Ukrainians have proven to us that they can stand up to Russia.
That's right.
We misjudged them. We really did.
Yeah. Well, then let's invoke Margaret Mead, okay, who said, never doubt that a small group of committed people can change the world. It's the only thing that ever has. And that's small group of committed, dedicated people. They are perhaps saving this world for democracy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you very much for what you're doing. Thanks everybody for joining in with us at Congregation L'Dor Va-Dor. We got services on Friday night at Grand Villa. They don't cost you a dime. Your intelligence will not be insulted. You will hear rational thinking. And if we say anything that's irrational, call us on it and tell us we're wrong, and we'll be glad to entertain your point of view. We're also going to be having a Passover celebration to celebrate freedom. And perhaps Dmytro at the Passover Seder, perhaps you might want to join us in celebrating freedom. It's a holiday of freedom. Perhaps you could join us and say a few words and share some more support for Ukraine. Yeah, and we welcome everyone to join us at L'Dor Va-Dor, regardless of what religion you are, or regardless of your belief in theological or supernatural beings. If you believe in love and hope and freedom, join us. Join us at Congregation L'Dor Va-Dor. You can find us at ledorvador.org, and you can check out what we're doing and where we're at. Sharon, you want to wrap it up? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Dmytro, for what you're doing.
Thank you.